Hi, I'm Jessica Behal with Great Rivers Regional System for Addiction Care, and we are continuing our This Is My Story series. And today we have a family member who is here to tell their story, tell the story of her son. And this is Denise Hansen. Denise is very well known in the recovery community and in the community in general. You've probably heard a lot about her story. I got to actually hear Denise speak back in January at Faith Communities United when we had our faith communities and come together in Kanawha County. And so we wanted to make sure that Denise was a part of this, that Denise was a part of this series. And so today we have Denise with us. Denise, we want to thank you for joining us this afternoon. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Jessica, for having me. This is really an honor. Okay, so I'm going to start out talking about my son, Greg. I'm going to show his picture here so that you guys can see him. He's right there. That was the picture that we used at the Youth Summit with Mark Wahlberg a couple of years ago. Yeah, when the parents got up on the stage and represented their child that had died. So that was the picture that we used. And Greg was really a good kid. He really was. He had a lot of wit and he was so funny. He could make anybody laugh and he never met a stranger. He was super coordinated. He was very attractive. I think he had his first girlfriend call him when they were in third grade. But Greg suffered from addiction from the time he was 14. He'd been in a four-wheeler accident with his dad, and through surgery on his knee and a very long recovery, requiring wheelchair and crutches and everything, he ended up being addicted to pain medicine. So over the years, the 12 years that he suffered, he had overdosed 4 times before he finally died. Greg was really my hero. He really was. It's so incredibly hard, and people just don't realize what people have to go through when they have addiction and then trying to go into recovery, and what their body has to go through and how they fight themselves. And to be able to willingly do that to yourself and cut yourself off and go through the program and go through the steps, it takes an enormous personality. It takes a real strong human being. And because that is one of the worst things anybody will ever have to go through, that tests their inner strength, their mind, and their physical body. And so for Greg to be able to do that 4 different times, knowing what he was going into after the first time, really, he was my hero. And I think anybody who is in recovery should be looked at as a hero. I really do. Greg was really involved with the recovery community in Florida. He lived at a halfway house after he had gone through treatment, and it was like a really large commune. It was called Solutions by the Sea. It was for all men, and he became very involved there. It was like a pay it forward system, where when a new person shows up, they are assigned a mentor and they walk them through everything, buy their food for the first few weeks, and take them here and take them there and show them where the AA meetings are, the NA meetings are. They have to go to one every day. They're randomly drug tested once a week. It was a really strict halfway house, and Greg really enjoyed it. And so once he was there for so many months, he started paying it forward and helping people, and that really helped him to stay true to his recovery and stay clean. So after he passed, I really wanted to continue what he did by helping other people. But I wanted to do it on the standpoint of improving the medical field. because I'm a nurse, and unfortunately I've had to see firsthand how people in the medical profession treat people who are in recovery or in active addiction. And it's toxic, it is horrible. And I made it my mission to try to, one of my missions, to try to educate medical professionals. So I've been involved with UC, and we held, an educational seminar. I've worked with the West Virginia INSTA, it's the International Nurses Society on Addiction. And one of the videos that was made through the Mark Wahlberg Youth Foundation, it was called Greg's Story. And it was all about what had happened to Greg and how it had affected our family from losing him. And that story is now being used at WVU in the nurse practitioner program. I had showed it at the International Nurses Society on Addiction in Baltimore last year. And everyone was so moved by this video because they said that, they don't get that end of it. And they don't get to see what it really is like nowadays for someone that's in addiction, because it's so different than what it used to be on so many different levels. And so this actually gave them a true depiction of what was going on with this person. And so they just really appreciated it. And so they also now are using it worldwide as a video for nurse practitioners, people in psychology, anyone that deals with people that have addiction or that are in recovery. This video is being shown to them. And yeah, and it's really, it was an honor to represent Greg and to show what happens and what the consequences are and how it changes a family forever afterwards, because it really does. I have since left nursing full-time because of the stress, but I am still focused on educating. I had to step away in order to free up time so that I could help people. And so I returned to the state full-time so that I can take off when I need to take off and make these commitments and be able to actually keep the commitments. Because when I was a nurse full-time, I was either getting stuck over or on call. And so I never got to keep the commitments I wanted to keep. So that's what I focused on. The other thing that I have focused on is Greg's mission, and it is to push for all cell phones to become listed so that law enforcement or first responders can locate those cell phones or find out the owner's name. I think that's really important to not only cut down on the drug dealing, the business of drug dealing in this country, but also to help people who have non-listed phone numbers, the burner phones or the government issued phones, non-contract phones. It really helps them as well. And the other things that I've been involved with, it was really important to me to give parents and families that are left behind a voice, someplace they can go talk to each other, have a support group. So, because when Greg died, it was very isolating for me. And so what I did was I started a GRASP group in Charleston, here in Charleston. It's a nationwide support group system, and they have a membership on Facebook, but it's called Grief Recovery After Substance Passing. And it is for any family member, close friend that wants to come to this support group meeting. It's strictly peer-to-peer. There's no counselors involved or anything like that. And we meet twice a month at the West Virginia Institute of Spirituality. And I am resuming those meetings now face-to-face, in person, just with the 6 feet distance. But so I've started resuming them again. But if anybody is interested, they can go on grasp.org, and they'll find out in Charleston, West Virginia, who the person is, and they'll get my phone number and all my contact information. So one of the other things, and I do speak at different places, like where you heard me talk, and I talk at the West Virginia Overdose Awareness Day tribute. I've spoke there a couple of times. But something that I really think is important now that God has been really pushing me to do and go outside of my comfort zone is to relay a message to people who are wanting to go in recovery or who are in recovery. People that are still in active addiction. This is just a message that's very important for people to hear. And the fourth time that Greg overdosed was July, just a few months before he died in November. And he had overdosed in front of our house on the street. His friend had pulled him out of his vehicle because he didn't want the police searching his car. So he drug him out of the car and laid him on the asphalt that was, 100 and some more than that degrees outside. So I was there. I got home just as the paramedics came, and they administered Narcan, and he was revived. But he had been unconscious and non-responsive for several minutes, and he was completely blue. So after he came back, we focused on, he wanted to go in recovery again. He wanted to do it again. And so we found him a place to go in Michigan. And then afterwards, he was going to go to Salem, Virginia, to a sober living home. And because we knew that coming back home just really wasn't an option. It never had worked out before. And he did great when he was living in Florida. So he really needed to be away from here. And it's not that the parents don't want their children, it's that they need distance. The family needs distance because there's so much resentment and non-trust and anger still that goes on just even after 28 days. And so if you have that distance, Greg and I ended up having a fabulous relationship, after he had been in recovery in Florida, and our relationship really grew. And he could never lie to me. He always had to tell me the truth about everything, whether I wanted to hear it or not. But one thing he did share with me, and this is what God wants me to do, is to tell people. So Greg had a near-death experience in heaven, and meeting God. And he had relayed all of this to me after he came out of the 28-day program. And he was really big into riding four-wheelers. He loved to go to camp with his dad, and we had a camp that we went to as well. And in this visit, he was on a four-wheeler, and he was going up this one trail that they always went up to, when they were at camp. And on past it was this really steep hill climb that the guys would ride up if they were experienced, because it was so steep you could, if you didn't go at the right speed, you could just tip backwards. And he saw an older man just standing in the woods by himself. And the older gentleman walked up to him, and Greg shut off the four-wheeler and took his helmet off, and they started talking. And he asked the man if he had ever went up the hill climb before. And the man said he had gone millions of times. And he said, and you've gone 3 times. And Greg said, well, I don't think I've ever gone. And he said, yeah, you've gone 3 times before. And Greg just thought, it was a little uneasy, and he wasn't sure what to think about that, but he just kept making small talk with him. And, he described him to me, what he looked like. He said he had gray hair, a beard, and a mustache, tan pants, just an average looking gentleman. just a really, friendly voice. And so Greg told him that after they had talked for a few minutes that he wanted to try it. And he called him by name. He said, "I'm sure that you will be able to go up, Greg, since you've gone before." And so Greg thought that was still uneasy because he knew his name. And he thought that was weird. So he said, "Well, I'm going to go ahead and go." And he started the four-wheeler up, and he put his helmet on, and the man walked up to him and yelled in his ear. And he said, "Gregory Scott Hansen, I honor you, I cherish you, and you are one of my soldiers." And Greg asked me what that meant. And I told him that that was a visit from God, and that he was welcoming him to heaven. Because the other thing that he had said was, "Now go on up that hill, because you'll never want to come back down, and all I ask is that you never take advantage." And it's something that I need to share with people, because during the 12 years that Greg was in addiction, we basically had got to the point that we felt like God had forsaken us. And I was so angry with him. And when Greg first passed, I was still angry, very angry. And, but after a trip to France and going to all those old cathedrals, and it just really made me more and more aware that, I shouldn't be mad at God. And I started just really listening to what he wanted me to do. And he wants me to tell everybody that's in recovery that they are his soldiers, that this is a war, and that they are the heroes because of the life that they've gone through. They've been through hell, and they have seen the devil. They have seen monsters. And it is something that not everyone can make it. And some people try to make it and others don't. It's just kind of like people that have cancer. Some people make it and some people don't. And Greg did not make it. But for the people who have made it, they need to know that it's almost as if they're holding themselves back by saying, "I'm an addict," or "I'm an alcoholic." God recognizes that, but he wants them to start saying they're his soldiers, because they're going out helping other people and to try to conquer this addiction and go into recovery and be successful. And that's just something that I really need to push now. And so I'm going to try more and more to get out and speak more and more about it, so that, and I'd like to, once they start resuming recovery meetings, I'd like to start going to recovery meetings and sharing his story to, bring people an uplifting message. And people that have doubt that there's a God or there's not a God, there is definitely a God. And I think if they could hear this story, they could relate, and it would boost their self-esteem, knowing that it's not just that they're an addict and they're recovering, they're one of God's soldiers.
Absolutely. Well, I really appreciate you, Denise, sharing your story and just the amazing impact that Greg has had on your family, but now the impact he's having on other families worldwide. That is so awesome to know that his story is being heard worldwide, and that so many lives are being changed because of you and your family and your willingness to speak out. And so we want to thank you so much. Excuse me. We want to thank you so much for joining us and for telling your story, telling Greg's story. And if you or someone you know would like to tell your story, then we ask that you reach out to us here at Great Rivers. We would love to be that platform for you to be able to share. Maybe you don't have the platforms that Denise has talked about, being able to share at different places. Maybe you don't have those platforms. Well, we will gladly be that platform for you to be able to share your story of hope, your story of forgiveness, your story of being a soldier, whether you're a parent soldier or a family member soldier, or you're a soldier because you are in recovery yourself. Whatever it may be, we would love to be able to share your story with other people. And so, Denise, again, we thank you for sharing your story. Maybe you have some questions for Denise or you'd like to get in contact with her. Feel free to reach out to us. We would love to put you in contact with her. And
Yeah.
also, don't forget to check out GRASP. That is an awesome group. I know I've heard Denise talk about that before. And Denise, it's grasp.org. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Grasp,
Yes.
GRASP.org. And
Yes.
it's a grief group basically for individuals, for family members or friends who have lost someone to substance use disorder. And so we would love to make sure that you are getting connected with that group as well. And so feel free to reach out if you have more information, and we will make sure that in the weeks and months to come, if you all have any questions for Denise, then we would love to put you all in contact with one another. So Denise, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you
And
very much, Jessica.
yeah, this was great. And so I really do appreciate you and all the other amazing people who have told their stories. And so be on the lookout for more of our This Is My Story series. And thank you guys for joining us today.
Thank you.